Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video. Hey there, Rulers, DMO73 here, bringing you a feature match for the week between myself on a black, white, red Brunhild list. I call it Nuking Brunhild because we have the option of nuking their board or nuking all of their stones, several different ways. And then I'm playing against Robert Strong, who is playing a green-blue machines list with Arthur. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and dig right in. To give you a little bit a better idea of the Brunhild list, it's not running the Alter package that previous black-white Brunhilds have run. It's instead playing the Mana Transmuter Life Gain package, or Life Sack package, as well as Lucifer and Satan as a way to kind of have like recursion of all that life gain and everything else, and an additional way to clear your opponent's board. So first turn, Clockwork Girl. First turn, Fallen Angel of Demonic Fiery Vengeance. So both sides already having that solid turn one fixer. The only difference is my fixer can kill his pretty effectively just before he even does anything. Turn 2 here, choosing to play a Guinevere, attempting to put the extra 2 counters on the Clockwork Girl. I ultimately don't mind that. We're kind of trying to save Fallen Angel of Fiery Vengeance to potentially punish the Guinevere, or potentially punish any kind of way he's going to try to play a Deus Ex Machina. So the idea being that when they cast Deus Ex Machina, you like kill all the things that have all the counters, so then they've committed to a card that's going to come in and be really, really weak. So Fallen Angel is going to help me with that significantly. Robert choosing to not do any reactions, like I said, so it's a matter of if Robert is going to choose to try to go swing in for the attack. Robert says, you know what, let's go ahead and try to punch in for that 6 damage. And I say, that's fine, I don't mind it. So I go down to 34. Going into my turn, we're going to go ahead and recover. We see a white stone off the top. Really was hoping to see another dark stone so that I could do a very cool play that we've seen before with the Invitation to Purgatory, but seeing the white stone also not too bad, because it does give me some other options based on what's in hand, like this one. We're gonna go ahead and awaken the Brunhild to attempt to kill the Clockwork Girl and kill my J Ruler. In response, he's gonna go ahead and banish it to try to put counters on Guinevere, which we're also fine with. We don't mind that happening at all, and then we're just going to go ahead and pass turn. So now we have that 10-10 flyer sitting on my side of the board, and more importantly, our Brunhild is dead, which is the first part in trying to get deck to where it's going to nuke all the stones, because we need to have Odin. Playing 2 here, attempting to play a Sky Round. And then we're going to go ahead and respond to the Sky Round because we don't want Guinevere to get too big. So we're going to go ahead and search for another Fallen Angel with the Fallen Angel, and then pay 2 life to try to shoot the Guinevere for -4 defense in response to the Sky Round. So again, we're trying to keep tokens off the board as much as possible. 4 defense, it's a nice even spot for us to be able to kill. 5 defense, not so much. And he spent 2 will for the turn here. Choosing to use his maintenance, which is great for us because he uses maintenance on only 1 resonator now just to keep it alive. That's a lot better for us because then it's not there to give him 4 counters later. And then choosing to play a Clockwork Girl, who will come in with 5 counters. So a couple of 6/6s, or sorry, a 5/6 or 5/8, I think. Math is hard on Guinevere. Unfortunately, seeing another white stone, we really wanted it to be a double black so we can cast Purgatory, but ultimately we have some other plays that we can make. We still have Brunhild though, which is nice, puts us in a really strong position having that 10-10 flyer. Really here my options are to either kind of get aggressive or just kind of hold up stuff for control-y, more control-y options with things like Spear of the Valkyrie or anything else, or do I want to use like a Blade of Faith from hand if I have it. We are playing the Odin's Judgment in the Rune deck, and that is because we are also playing Athena's Love, so we have that idea package of like Athena's Love during the upkeep, then Odin's Judgment, blow up your opponent's whole board and not your own, and then swing in. Choosing to play Messenger of Odin, so then we do have access to double black, so we can cast Purgatory. Only choosing to get rid of one card here, not removing the Satan from the game. We want the 2 colors here because we're going to cast Command of Life and Death to bring the card back that we just removed, which was Mana Transmuter. Use that to pay 3, go down to 29, and then play that Fallen Angel. So a really, really explosive turn out the gate there from just 3 will. And now we have this access to kind of floating wheel during either player's turn. It ramps us up to being able to cast Odin, and we can swing in for 10 in the air, and he just has to take it, so it goes down to 30. Heading to Robert's turn. Thinking about what he wants to do here. A lot of interesting options. A Lancelot would be really good here. It definitely have enough counters to be able to board wipe. Choosing to use Excalibur Cannon here, which at this point in time we're kind of okay with, but we're going to have some things to do in response. We're going to try to give Eternal. We first tap Brunhild, but ultimately we want to try to keep Mana Transmuter alive. You'll see us kind of figure that out here in a second, where I kind of swap it around. And then we're going to go ahead and tap to sack to go grab another Fallen Angel, because once again, Fallen Angel can replace itself, which is great, and then just sits in the graveyard as this handy dandy spot removal at the cost of life when we need it. And sometimes 4 damage, or -4 defense is just really all you need based on certain machines that come into play. Choosing the piles here, either saying let me keep Mana Transmuter and Odin, so the will fixing package, or let me keep a 10/10 flyer that's just going to beat your face in. The other idea is to possibly keep Messenger of Odin with the Brunhild, so then either way I have some kind of will production. But the thought here being that it's a pretty solid forced choice between leaving a 10/10 flyer that he can't really interact with right now, or letting me keep my will fixing, both my will fixers. Ultimately choosing to let me keep the will fixers, and thankfully this turn Mana Transmuter has Eternal, so I'll be able to block with it without having to worry about it. Ultimately, Robert choosing not even to swing in though, which makes sense because Mana Transmuter blocking either of those resonators is going to kill it. And so he just doesn't want to lose that. So seeing that third Lightstone, which technically now is a Darkstone because of Messenger, is excellent. You see I have double protection of the angels in hand. Paying 3 life to play the Fallen Angel with Mana Transmuter. Say, well, you know what? Let's go ahead. Let's try for it. Let's swing in for 6. It's because you see I have those Spears of the Valkyrie in hand as well, which will work great to be able to get rid of any blockers that are in the way, and also regain me some of the life that Mana Transmuter has spent. That's one of the reasons, kind of the reason the deck plays the Spears, is because we always have a Valkyrie with Brunhild, so that when we're spending all this life, we have this spot removal that helps us chip through for damage, which is great. Serves as spot removal, and then also gains us back some of that life until we get Lucifer online. Once we get Lucifer online, obviously we're gaining life at the end of every single turn. But we're just going to go ahead and take the 6 and then leave up the extra will to be able to do stuff on Robert's turn. Especially now with having his Clockwork Girl is a 600 defense. So now with one of those Spears of the Valkyrie and Mana Transmuter, if he tries to play Deus Ex Machina, we can just kill it. Kill pretty much everything on his board before the Deus Ex even enters, so he wouldn't even get those counters. He'll just enter as a potentially even a 0 cost, and then at that point in time he just dies to rules process. Casting Invitation to go search for a card. At this point in time, I'm feeling pretty comfortable that he's probably searching for a Lancelot. I don't necessarily think that he's searching for anything else. A Deus Ex Machina here would not be helpful for him. He's got free will open. He really needs to try to clear the board. I'm sitting on perfect will here. You know, he's probably thinking that Lancelot is probably his best bet to just kind of try to force the out that way. Maybe thinking that the only removal that I've been playing is Blade of Faith, because Brunhild hasn't been running much of anything else. Does play the Lancelot here. In response, we're going to go ahead and pay 2. Pay 2 white to Spear of the Valkyrie onto the Clockwork Girl to try to kill her. And then he's going to try to banish it in response to kill the Clockwork Girl, or to pump up Guinevere. And then in response to that, we're going to go ahead and lose the Mana Transmuter at this point in time to burn the extra 2 Transmuters, go down to a grand total of 22 life, and then kill Guinevere before she gets the extra counters. So once again, at this point in time, Robert is tapped out. I have access to Eternal, which is great, and then his Lancelot will come in with 2 counters, which isn't enough to do anything, and he doesn't have maintenance anymore. So Lancelot is just a pretty 9/9 at this point, which doesn't matter to me in the slightest. Anytime he passes turn, goes to me. Pay 2. Athenia's Love during the upkeep. So all of my entities have Eternal for the turn. Calling a Stone. Paying 3 life. Casting an Odin, who has his Faith ability. So this will heal my Jade Ruler and destroy all Magic Stones, but all of my Magic Stones have Eternal, so that'll kill his. So Robert will quickly realize, yeah, there's really nothing I can do at that point based on this matchup. And so with that, we will be pushing on to game 2. As we go into the next game, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell down below so you're notified when all of our videos goes live, and consider supporting the channel by being a member here on YouTube or by checking it out on Patreon for all the cool exclusive perks that come with supporting us. Thank you guys so much. Let's go to the next game. So game 2 here, Robert choosing to go on the play as again, hopefully recognizing this time that he can't allow himself to just have his stones blown out. First turn Guinevere. Unfortunately, a first turn pass from my list. Down comes the second Guinevere. So building those counters pretty quick. Swinging in for 4. I say that's fine. I don't mind that at all. Go down to 36. Passing turn to me. Darkness Stone. Energizing in the Odin. Messenger of Odin. Choosing whether or not I want to try to go for a play that I did last time of ramping up with Mana Transmuter. Ultimately choosing just to pass the turn. I think I'd rather be a little bit more reactive, at least in the first couple turns, based on what Robert might be trying to play, especially since it definitely feels like my hand has been a much slower start this time around. So being a little bit more passive, as we've talked about in the Teacher's Lounge, sometimes it's best to just hold back and kind of play reactive for a little bit, because you don't want to accidentally put your foot too much on the pedal and get punished to a point where you just can't recover. The first few turns right now in Force of Will are very, very important, and so in this meta, so it's just very important to know whether or not it's even worth taking that risk. So playing a Brunhild and then passing turn. There's that second Darkness Stone. He is tapped out, so that feels pretty good. So we're going to pay 2. Invitation to Purgatory, at which point in time we are going to use the red to remove from the game stand. So we'll get to send 2 cards to the grave. So we can send Mana Transmuter and a Fallen Angel. So we get a spot removal card and a ramp card. We can use the black. Command of Life and Death only costs 1 black. I mean, we have Odin anyway, so that, or Messenger of Odin anyway, so that doesn't really matter. But we can play the Command of Life and Death here, bring back the Mana Transmuter, bring it into the field, and then also pay 3 life here, go down to 33, produce a white, and then say, you know what, you are not going to be able to use that Brunhild. Get it out of here, get it removed from game. You can't banish it to produce will during your opponent's turn. I'd rather just punish the 3-drop. You know, again, this is a clear state of there wasn't really a need for him to play that Brunhild right now. It was probably unlikely that he was going to mystery box. I mean, he's probably trying for a mystery box, but he didn't really have a way to defend it, so it probably wasn't worth putting his foot down on the pedal quite that early. Seeing a green stone. Now he has access to Deus Ex Machina even without playing anything else. We see a Vivian come down. And then choosing to use maintenance here. In response to that, we're going to go ahead and burn ourselves too, go down to 31 and kill the Vivian, since he's trying to put counters on the Vivian. Again, anytime we can make it so that maintenance only gave him 1 set of counters is fine. He'll banish it in response to give some extra counters to Guinevere, which still makes her very large, which is unfortunate, but ultimately we just wanted him to have as few counters as possible. So we technically still got 4 counters, but also lost a creature in the process. Down comes that Deus Ex Machina. Unfortunately, we don't have any way to stop it at this point, so he's just going to pull all but 1 of the counters to put 10 counters on Deus Ex. So a pretty small Deus Ex, but it does have Flying and Eternal, which is a little bit difficult to see. And we're not playing Odin's Judgment in the Rune deck. We're playing, we're not playing Blade of Faith in the Rune deck. We're playing Odin's Judgment, so we don't have a way to cast it. If I was playing a Blade of Faith, I feel like this move would have been really, really poor, because he invested a lot of will, removed a bunch of counters, doesn't even have enough counters to summon a Camelot here, and then is just going to get Blade of Faith and can only move 1 of the counters off of the Deus Ex, because once he removes 1, he'll go down to 9 and won't have his ability anymore. So we paid 3 life here with the Mana Transmuter to be able to play Estema. It's only going to drain. It is not going to gain. I don't have enough runes revealed at this point in time, but I'm still okay with that. Mainly just wanted a flyer that I can pump up with the Protection of the Angels that's in my hand to be able to trade with the Deus Ex, or at least block the Deus Ex. Paying 4 life here. This is, again, all of these life pays are fine because they're constantly racking up triggers and counters on Stan, which is our kind of secondary board wipe, as well as a reanimation package. So drawing that extra card and then just passing the turn. Choosing to play 2 or a Arthur, choosing Blade of Faith, I believe, if I remember correctly, for his token. With Deus Ex Machina, the more counters you have, the more things that Arthur has instant speed barrier to, but ultimately probably the only thing in my deck that really targets is Blade of Faith or Spear of the Valkyrie, so picking 1 is, you know, it already eliminates 50% of what he has to worry about protecting, and then 1 counter from the Deus Ex would protect him from the other. Thinking about whether or not he wants to swing. Plays 1 for a reconnaissance. He's got to shape his hand maybe a little bit better. Seeing another Deus Ex Machina in that top 3 would be really helpful because you could cast it, remove 9. Once it resolves, remove like 9 of the counters from the Deus Ex. Suddenly have 18 counters, and then he can kind of start turning things on from there at the cost of 1 Deus Ex. I think ultimately the option would be to swing first and then do it, but it's just something that you could do. Regardless of what he grabs here, choosing to just kind of pass the turn. Paying 3 life here. At the end of turn to use Spear of the Valkyrie to attempt to kill the Arthur. So the main reason I'm doing this here is I recognize that he could just give it barrier, but ultimately in my mind I'm fine with that because I still get to gain the life, and at the same time it'll make Deus Ex not have flying and eternal, which is the bigger issue here. So choosing ultimately to sack it to pump up Gwen, I get to gain the life from the swing and then go into my turn with the card draw. You see I have double Lucifer in hand here, and Lucifer is a bad card to have in hand. You want it in grave to be able to potentially reanimate it, especially like at instant speed and things like that. Going to recover. Call Stone. The biggest problem here is that Brunhild is still alive. Paying 4 life here for a stemma because ultimately I'm getting to the point now where I really wanted to have Brunhild be dead so I could set up Odin combo again, but ultimately I haven't seen a Brunhild. Like, I'm trying to dig through cards to get a Brunhild resonator to hand so I can just kill her myself, but unfortunately that doesn't quite work. So it's probably going to come down to either me drawing one or me having to flip Brunhild. But even at 12, it's bigger than a lot of stuff that Robert has, at least currently, so it'll be difficult for him to even kill it. Going ahead and paying the 3 life to play the Lucifer. I don't mind paying the life here, because ultimately means I'm just going to gain it all back. Now I could be risky here and pay an additional grand of life to Stemma to drain him for 5. Choosing not to do that at this point in time because there is that 1 blue will left available and I don't want to walk into a Keys' call. So the idea of paying life and then when Lucifer triggers to try to gain life, you Keys' call it so they just are stuck having spent all that life. Definitely not what I want to see right now, and I would rather still be way up on life, and yes, I will gain some back, but I don't really want to drain too much right now. End of turn trigger. Lucifer gives me back my 7 life that I paid, 4 for a stemma and 3 for mana transmuter. Now, keeping in mind, Lucifer does not, he does see damage, but he does not see anything that happens during your opponent's turn. It's only stuff that you did during your own turn. And at this point in time, walking into a little bit of an overextension with the cannon, Excalibur cannon. I've seen this happen before from last game. I still kind of walked into it. Ultimately, 4 things is not too bad here because I have 2 flyers, so I can split up the flyers too, which is really, really nice. And then ultimately, again, I can split up the will fixing here. So choosing to pay 3 while I still have the Lucifer in play to float some potential will. And then the sorting is mana transmuter plus Lucifer. Choosing to see which filter goes with which person. Start to line up, potentially putting both the flyers together, and I go, wait a minute, that's a bad idea. So we put Messenger of Odin and a stemma in one pile, mana transmuter, and Lucifer in the other. I think this package probably would have been better to put mana transmuter with a stemma and then Messenger of Odin with Lucifer. Because Lucifer I kind of want to keep around, and losing Lucifer and Mana Transmuter, they kind of synergize together really well, whereas Mana Transmuter and a stemma are just going to drain me faster. So I think the easier call here would be to pick the stemma. You let me keep the stemma and the Messenger of Odin, The whole idea of why I split it this way was the idea of, regardless of what he picks, I get to keep a flyer and I get to keep some kind of will fixing, which is what I want to keep around. The longer I have that in this matchup, the better it is for me, because it just sets up much better plays later on. Choosing to let me keep the Transmuter and the Lucifer, which I must admit is not what I was expecting during the course of this match. But ultimately great for me, because this means essentially that Mana Transmuter is just a free 1 will every turn, as long as Lucifer doesn't get killed or keys called. Playing a Vivian here. Swinging in the air for 10. Choosing at this point to use Power of Immortality on the Lucifer to go ahead and block it. And then just bring it back into defense. Main reason here is it turns over another rune, which turns on future Astemas, and it stops a block, and doesn't lose me a creature, right? And I get to keep my protection of the angels until it actually matters, which is when I need to protect myself from being targeted. Robert's seeing if he wants to do anything else with the end of his turn. Ultimately choosing not, so we go to my turn, definitely during the upkeep, and then we move on. Paying to produce white with the Mana Transmuter. Crashing it into the Lucifer, or sorry, crashing it into the Deus Ex Machina. Kind of clarifying how Lucifer works here in terms of gaining life back at the end of turn. That it's only on my turn, but it sees all the things. Translation errors are still definitely a thing. And the English version doesn't specify damage. Swinging into the Deus Ex, he goes, okay, that's fine, I don't mind that at all. Using the 1 white floating and 2 more, we're going to go ahead and flip Brunhild over to bring back the Mana Transmuter. Only reason why we did this is because it essentially means that we're only paying 2 really to Judgment this turn. I mean, kind of. And it also just gives Brunhild a reanimate target. At this point in time, I had no other monsters in my graveyard. I wanted to get Brunhild out so she could serve kind of as a boss monster and set herself up for being killed, because I have access to instants. I can go get Odin whenever I want, thanks to Freed from the Altar. Paying 3 life here, looking at how many cards I have in my hand. I think I have 7 at this point, to produce black, playing Freed from the Altar, which will then cost me another 4 life to go down to 1,500. At this point in time, when it ends, I will gain 1,100. At the end, I paid twice with that, and then with Mana Transmuters, and then once for, so 1,000 life, I apologize. And then wanting to get to 8 cards in hand, and the whole reason to do that is so that we can discard this other Lucifer that's in my hand. Moving to end of turn, attempting to discard and then trigger Lucifer, take myself back up to 2,500 life because there's no response, and then passing the turn to Robert. So Robert's in a bad state here. He's already used his pseudo board wipe. He still hasn't seen a Lancelot. He is opening up to a potential mystery box, but it will tap him out, so that's a little bit of a risk. And he's dealing with a flyer that he can't destroy, and a little bit of just a will wall. And also, if he can't deal damage, he faces the idea of me kind of cascading into life gain off of the 2 Lucifers and all this life that I'm spending. Even the idea of before the upkeep, I could pay with Mana Transmuter, pay another black, pay a white, pay 1,000 life, discard a card, to bring the Lucifer back, and now suddenly, just in that one move at the end of turn, I'm gaining 2,600 life, and then I get to recover. So at that point in time, it's pretty, the only real limitation is how much life I had at the start of the turn. Choosing to cast the mystery box there, we see a Keys' Call go, we see a Skyfall go, a Sky Camelot comes into play, a Vivian comes into play, and a Clockwork Girl comes into play. So pretty decent, not too bad. The 1-drops aren't really that great. The Camelot is the big heavy hitter here, but I'm feeling pretty comfortable with 2 copies of Protection of the Angels to be able to stop it, as well as if I really need to, Athenia's Love to stop prevent any of my guys from being killed this turn. So counters will come in. Clockwork Girl has 4, Vivian has 3, other Vivian has, one Vivian has 3, one Vivian has 2, and then we've got the 10 and 3. So lots of counters on the board here. We're going to go ahead and pay 3 life, go down to 25, and cast Athenia's Love from hand. We want to save the Athenia's Love from Rune Deck until we're ready to do kind of our big old heavy hitter move. Seeing if that's going to resolve or not. So we've got 3, 6, total of 12 counters outside of the Deus Ex Machina. So if he wanted to, he could go grab another Camelot here to potentially respond, which I'm feeling confident in, is why I cast the why I don't really mind that. I have the ability to protect the Mana Transmuter here with a Protection of the Angels, which is what I really want to do. I want to keep him safe. I don't mind Lucifer going to the grave, especially since next turn I'm probably just going to go ahead and board wipe with Odin's Judgment, seeing that he is out of cards, or out of will. Point in time, there's a real debate here whether or not he wants to try to use those counters with the Guinevere to try to bring in a second Camelot. It would spend a lot of his counters outside of Deus Ex Machina. I still have will available to burn. He's thinking, you know, what do I really want to use these counters right now? Do I want to use them for something else? The only counters I would have at this point is the Deus Ex Machina, which can only move 1, and then is immediately weak to stuff. The other concept being here that at this point in time, if he hasn't seen an Odin's Judgment come out of the Rune Deck, he's probably thinking that, or he might be thinking that, because I haven't Odin's Judgment yet, maybe I'm playing a Blade of Faith there, maybe he's thinking because I haven't Blade of Faith yet, there's probably an Odin's Judgment here, so does he want to put another creature on board when he's tapped out that he can't protect, that's just going to get nuked next turn anyway, maximizing the value that I'm going to get off of a 3-will card. Ultimately choosing to just pass the turn, letting the Athenia's Judgment happen. So getting to draw for my turn, which is great. And the card that I draw off the top is a Separation of Fates. So Separation of Fates here, pretty solid in the fact of being able to Separation of Fates and remove the Eternal from that Deus Ex Machina for the turn, which is great. This sets me up for a brilliant Odin's Judgment play to be able to nuke the board, clear it completely, and keep all of my stuff intact here. The idea being that at this point in time, I believe I had 13 counters on Satan in the RFG, so that would have been enough to be able to force him to kill everything. The problem being that in response to the Satan, he could then go get a Camelot and then not only kill my stuff because I don't have access to cheap protection during my turn, because protection is only during your opponent's turn, but also then he just could choose to sacrifice the 2 Camelots and then one of his 1-drops, so like Clockwork Girl, at which point in time he could then reveal a top card from his deck and then potentially drawn to another machine, and I'm still facing down this wide board. So ultimately choosing to let the separation happen after moving 1 counter over to the Vivian that has 3 counters, paying 3 life here to go down to 19, and casting Odin's Judgment. So all of my I still have access to the Athenia's Love here. I'm casting the Odin's Judgment and then I'm passing priority to Robert, and this is a little bit of a risk, right? So this is a kind of a bluff play. The idea of I'm thinking that Robert's going to try to get advantage off of these counters while he still has them, and so I'm hoping that he does something here to add to the chase, at which point in time, by spending those counters, it sets me up to be able to then play the Athena's Love from my rune deck. If he doesn't respond to it, then yes, I will lose both of my guys. But ultimately, in my mind, this is worth the risk and potentially blowing this out to the point of having a reaction so that we get access to what we need. Robert's saying, well, if I do get the Camelot, then he would just get nuked anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and try to tap down your 2 resonators. So my play worked. So in response to attempting to tap down my resonators, he's going to go ahead and do, I'm going to go ahead and cast the Athena's Love. He still chooses to not, at that point in time, use the Camelot ability to go get one, because again, it would just nuke it, and sure, yeah, it would just come into play dead, and he'd lose another resonator. He does get to go look at the potential machine to see if it is a machine, having 2 will here to grab the other Lucifer here, and he is tapped out at this point. I don't think it was actually machine. Paying 1,000 life with the Lucifer here to pump it up. So at this point in time, at the end of turn, I will gain 26 and go up to 35, because both Lucifers will see all the life that I've paid and recover it all, and I've paid 13. So 26 life altogether. So making it a 35 all game very quickly, and establishing a very strong board presence. At this point in time, I'm more concerned, especially having the Satan in the removed from game area and the ability to produce red with the mana transmuter. I'm feeling like, oh cool, well if he reestablishes again and somehow kills all my stuff, then I'm still sitting on Satan, which is just another board wipe after that, and a huge body and everything else. Because I'm feeling pretty sure that this deck is not going, this game around, I'm not going to destroy all his stones. And that's kind of the reason why the deck was designed to be able to kind of go a different path. Like if you do get that early game cool Odin combo, that's awesome, but you're still seeing them in this great late game package of life gain and flyers that some decks just can't answer. So you're kind of caught in the middle in terms of exactly how you want to run that. But you can go either way, you can kind of pivot it based on how the match is going. If you find an opening to do it early game, it can kind of just sometimes seal the match. But if you don't, if you try to get around, you know, if they don't find a way to kill your Brunhild or anything else, then you still have a package to be able to push through at the end of the game. Swinging in the air for 7 with Lucifer here. Says that's fine, I'll take it, no blocks. In response, I'll pay a grand of life to make it 9. So down to 25, up down to 26. This is now 2 grand of life gained at the end of turn, potentially. Swinging in with the next one, again, 7 in the air. Chooses to take that as well. So in response to no blocks, we're going to go ahead and pay 1,000 again. So now we're gaining 4,000 life at the end of his turn, because each one's gaining me 2,000, and I'm hitting him for another 9, so down to 17. Paying 3 life here, so now we're gaining a total of 4,600 to produce red. And saying, you know what, let's try it. You've got 1 will open. Let's try to cast a Satan with 15 counters on it. An attempt to, well, I still don't think we actually have anything in graveyard to reanimate. I don't think so. But we're really just trying to wipe his board, forcing him to sacrifice creatures until he gets to greater than 15, which is everything at this point. Robert here does have the 1 will available to keys call it, That is going to stop it. He gets to draw a card, but we feel fine with that. We just needed the body, and we're going to be swinging in the air with Brunhild anyway. And then we still have access to double White Will on his turn for protection of the sheriffs if needed. Oh, choosing to call Stone. I think that gives us our second White Will. If we're not going to use, but actually we're just going to go ahead and tap out and play a second Transmuter. So that will also do it. And then pay another 3 life there to produce a white, at which point in time we'll play Odin, a Messenger of Odin. So at this point in time, we're sitting on a grand total of 2,600 life paid for the turn. So we will gain a grand total of 52 and go back to 61 and then pass the turn to Robert. Saying, cool. On your turn, I also just get to produce 2 will if I need it, and then we'll go from there. He's having spent his mystery box, having spent his Excalibur, we're feeling pretty comfortable that, especially with double protection in hand, that there's really not going to be a way for Robert to deal with the board state as is. Playing a Guinevere here, adding some counters onto the Lancelot. Playing 3. Casting a Lancelot. So this would be kind of his one way to deal with it, is thinking about just wiping my board back with lances. Definitely need to have some spot removal here. Kind of wasn't really feeling that the likelihood that he had a second lance here. Was feeling pretty comfortable, but ultimately could have been punished pretty hard. It doesn't kill my J ruler though. Even if it does, it sets me up for an Odining him back. Which at that point in time is still just a lot of damage to come back to. And he'd have to lose both the Lancelot and the Skybeat to be able to kill the Brunhild if he did wipe the board here. I also think at this point in time that he only has, let's see, 8 counters at this point. And so Robert is recognizing that he tapped poorly and shouldn't have tapped that second Dramaturgy for one of the cards that he cast. If he'd used one of his others, well, instead, he would have had double Dramaturgy, been able to get up to 10 counters, and then been able to wipe the board. This is another reason why you just have to be really careful. There's just so many nuances right now in the format where little tiny misplays, little tiny sequencing errors, little tiny decisions in terms of not remembering what's online, not remembering what's engraved, keeping track of exactly how you're paying for things and what you're leaving up can lead to pretty big momentum swings or pretty big shortcomings. Paying 3 here to play a Sky Round. I'm trying to remember what the name is. Skyfall here to try to do some damage here. We calculate the total damage here for a little bit. The card does target, so unlike something like Anubis's effect where it divides on resolutions, Skyfall specifically says target resonators, so he has to pick the damage division before recovery or before the card resolves, or at the very least pick what he's shooting. Which is great for me because it targets. So Protection of the Angels is going to protect at least potentially 2 things based on what he chooses to target. And then if he doesn't deal enough damage to the Lucifers, I can just pay my excess life to pump them up. So he's got a grand total of 28 damage on board. So if he picks 3 things, then I could pay a grand total of 4 grand of life, go down to 21, and most likely save both Lucifers, or just, pay life to give both of the Lucifers protection of the Angels, keep them safe, and then just admit that something else is probably going to die. So Robert is choosing to kind of divide up here. He's looking at Satan, he's looking at the 2 Lucifers, he's looking at the mana transmuters, and figuring out exactly how he wants to pay this life here. I think ultimately he comes down to the distinction of 9 to each of the Lucifers, and then an additional, puts him at 18, and then an additional 10 on the mana transmuter. I might be wrong on the exact extent of the damage though. I do know that he is going to target both Lucifers and the mana transmuter. So now that those targets are determined, figuring out if he wants to use the mana transmuter, how much damage to put on the mana transmuter. So in response to it, we're going to go ahead and pay 1,000 life to pump up each of the Lucifers. So 2,000 life there to knock them outside of the range of damage. So they're going to survive. And then we'll pay another 3 life with the Transmuter to protect him with Protection of the Angels so that he can't be targeted. So then he'll just be completely safe. So ultimately choosing to just make that Skyfall do nothing and leave Robert with only 1 card in hand, or 1 will available. Staring down a board full of a couple of flyers that can get very, very large very quickly, to as well as a flying J-Ruler. Now, ultimately, because there is the Sky Beat, he does have access to all of his guys having flying. If we had some kind of removal for it, that'd be great. You see, we do have the Brunhild in hand, so we could potentially cast it. The problem is, it only kills your ruler. It only kills your ruler. It doesn't kill J-Rulers. So you can't like kill your own Brunhild if it's flipped. It says if your ruler is Brunhild, you may make it Astral. I don't have a ruler right now. I have a J-Ruler. So swinging in with Brunhild. It says I'll block it with Guinevere. Swinging in with Mana Transmuter. Says I'll block. Thinks about blocking. Goes down to 11. Swings in with the second Transmuter. That one he does choose to block. I'll pay 3 life at that point to produce a black. And at this point in time, you know that I have a stemma in hand. At least you, the audience, knows. If Robert remembers, that's on him, because I searched for it with the Freed from the Altar. So I just need to do 100 more points of damage to Robert, and the game is over. And he has 2 blockers, and I have 4 attackers. So he's got 1 will available. Pretty much means that the game is over at this point. Swinging in for 14 with Lucifer. He bounces it back to the hand with Skyfall, which taps him out. So at this point in time, it absolutely is the end of the game, because he doesn't have enough counters on either of the lances to kill anything. None of his machines have enough counters to kill anything. I can swing in for 4. The second any of these guys connects with him for damage, that will be the end of the game. He goes down to 7, paying 3 more life. We go ahead and play a Stemma here, which is going to drain him down to 2, drain me back up to 37, and then we're going to see some silly shenanigans here. We're just kind of sequencing some things out and trying to make it so that I would gain as much life as possible at the end of turn, just for fun on the Lucifer. But that is going to be the match, because with the Stemma, just pay 1,000 life, deal 500 damage, and then we call it good. So a hard cast of a Odin that can't do anything, and then just choosing to pay 1,000 life with a Stemma to kill him. Just wanted to make sure Odin got to see the board one last time. So that is the match. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and huge thanks to Robert for playing his list against us. Deck profiles for both lists will be up later this week. And until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed this match, and we'll see you next time. So, class dismissed.